this news. I was actually surprised you haven't heard of it. So, in a recent book with Bob Iger that he published, he mentioned there was a whole chapter on apparently how George Lucas felt very betrayed with the way they handled Star Wars and the way they left him out of a lot of the creative process in Star Wars. Do you know anything about this, though?
The only thing I know is headlines I read. I've been reading for weeks that have been popping up like whenever I open a new tab on Chrome, and it's like suggested article. I've seen a lot of these suggested articles about George Lucas being sad. I haven't read any of them. I downloaded a video. I still haven't watched it. I downloaded a video on it. But as far as I knew, this was just like George Lucas came forward at some point and said that he was doing a sad.
Yeah.
That he was. I kind of assumed it was gonna be like him commenting on where the new trilogy is gone and how he's sad that like the extended universe stuff is gone. Hashtag bring back Mara Jade.
It was very it was very bizarre because none of this came from George Lucas himself. I mean, we've had interviews with him in the past where he's basically expressed like how he feels that Star Wars, the biggest disappointment with it is that it doesn't seem to be moving forward. It seems to be going back, which, I mean, I will say this though, the weird thing about that complaint to me was that the prequels, one of the main themes has always been about history repeating itself.
Right, but with the prequels, that was also the point of his message, and his message had an overarching theme and point to it that he'd been talking about for decades at that point. The sequel series, and the reason he never did it was because he didn't want to repeat that theme, supposedly.
Yeah, I don't know, it just surprised me is all. I'm not saying he's wrong for that opinion, it just, that's the opinion of his surprised me. But anyway, so we had been getting kind of hints about it before because he'd never gone too deep into what he thought about the movies. He just gave brief thoughts. Like he's like for episode 7, for example, he said fans will definitely love it. And then for episode 8, he's like, it was beautifully shot.
And he was right.
Yeah.
I agree with him on both of those points.
But now for episode 9, what's interesting is not a lot of people know this. Like I myself didn't know this until a couple days ago. But George Lucas actually does have a little bit of a hand in making episode 9.
Oh really? How much?
I don't quite know how much.
I have a suspicion. I know how much. I have a suspicion JJ brought him back specifically to handle the reshoots around Leia.
It's possible.
I have a feeling that he was specifically brought back to deal with his characters and the end of his characters. I don't think he has a lot to say about a lot of the new characters, but maybe they brought him back for his thoughts on Sidious and for his thoughts on Leia specifically.
And that's very possible. But my theory, though, as to why Bob Iger came forward about this and not George Lucas, because this is the weird part. And keep in mind, everything I'm about to say from here on is all conspiracy. Speculation. Yeah, I don't know Bob Iger as a human being. I don't know any of these famous people I talk about as human beings. So it's all speculation coming from me.
I've met George Lucas.
Yeah, I've seen him a few times at the theater.
I have talked to him once.
I have never talked to him.
When I was a kid, and I'm pretty sure it was at like the episode 3 release or something, or around that time.
I know the kind of person he is, not in a bad way, but he doesn't like to talk to fans.
He has a bit of a bad reputation amongst
does.
our peer group.
He does, but at the same time, it's like, I'm just going to choose to give him space because I don't want any interaction I have with him to be a bad interaction. Right. And I know for a fact, even if I just were to say hi to him,
that he doesn't like that shit.
Exactly. So that's why I choose not to. I choose to not have that negative interaction with him. I choose to just be like, hey, yeah, I saw him a few times.
For the record, like the negative interactions that you might be able to expect from a George Lucas in this day and age, he's a really cool person. I want to get that out first before I say anything else about George. He's awesome. He donates billions to charity. I'm pretty sure he gave every school in our entire area the computers they used for a long time. He's been supplying local schools with technology. He's started a lot of foundations for helping people in need, especially kids. He's a really cool person. Just if you ever get to read some of his like personal works about himself, his like personal philosophies and stuff are kind of cool to listen to. And he seems to be a really cool person if you actually know him. Now, his reputation with kids in the Bay Area. If you've ever worked at a movie theater that George Lucas has visited, you've probably been told not to talk to him, not to approach him, and not to mention his name, not to introduce yourself to him, because he has a reputation for getting employees in trouble. He doesn't like being recognized in public, supposedly, and he doesn't like being interacted with when he's not working, essentially, which is understandable to a point, but he has a pretty negative reputation about it in the workspaces I used to work at.
At Borders, back when Borders was the thing, and at the movie theater.
Yeah.
Like, a guy at the movie theater got fired because he handed George Lucas a drink and said, "There you are, Mr. Lucas."
Yep, that was a thing.
He got fired.
And there were horror stories, even before that happened, there were horror stories, like, from the moment I started working at the theater, from past employees or old employees or just employees that have been there a while, about George Lucas. He's a really cool guy who's just kind of a dick sometimes, it seems. A famous story of him being a dick was like he stood in front of one of his posters at the release of, like, was it episode 2?
No, it was the Clone Wars.
It was the Clone Wars? Yeah. So, wait, was it the Clone Wars or was it episode 2?
No, the Clone Wars.
Oh, God.
So, like, the animated movie. The one that was meant for kids.
It was meant for kids. And, like, he like, got mad at anyone who, like, approached him recognizing him in front of his own poster. Like, that's just...
Go ahead. Man, we went way off track here, but yeah.
Going back to the actual topic.
Theories. Yeah, so going back to my conspiracy theory on why Bob Iger came out about this and not George Lucas. Basically, I feel like it kind of all comes down to Bob Iger's mentality might have been that George Lucas really wants to work on episode 9. I'm sure, Bob Iger wants to have him there for episode 9, not necessarily because he thinks he'll add that much to the movie, but because it looks good for the press to have the original guy working on it. So, it may be a noble reason and it may not be. Who knows?
What's really weird is that it looks good to general press and looks really weird to fans because there's a side that really likes it and a side that really hates it, that he has any involvement at any time.
Exactly. That's what's kind of funny about it. But I think that he knew that once episode 9 was done and once George Lucas had nothing to lose, that got something caught in my throat. But that George Lucas would probably come forward about like how he felt betrayed.
So you think he's like getting ahead of the?
I think he's getting ahead of it, telling his side of the story before George Lucas tells his, and he's trying not to hold. He's trying to hold back as little as possible about it.
That way, the backlash can be as
little
as possible.
Exactly.
Especially given that George isn't making a statement on it. Right now.
Exactly. That's all my theory.
So later he can claim, well, George didn't correct me.
Yeah. They don't. Basically, he doesn't want to pull a Channel Awesome